Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in some more board game related content. Today, we are having another edition of What Have I Played This Week. But before we go any further, I would like to take a brief moment to make a few announcements about the channel. First and foremost, we just recently got our 28th subscriber, which for a channel that's only been around a little bit over than a month, I'm pretty happy and pretty content with that. Also, I have my first video that's on the verge of hitting 100 views. So that's also pretty exciting. And overall, the channel as a whole is just a few views shy of its first 1,000 views. So again, these are all small little milestones in the eyes of many, but in my eyes, I'm very excited about that. I'd like to thank all the people who have taken out their time, just to watch this video, just to hear what I and anybody else who's on this channel have to say about board games. Thank you very much. And with that being said, we'll get straight into what I have played this week. So this week was, I'd say, a middle of the pack week overall. I got 15 games played this week with a host of different gaming partners, and I will get cracking as to telling you guys what was played this week. So first of all, with my wife Lily, it was a pretty light week. We were only able to get 2 games to the table this week. Lily's been a little bit under the weather, and some of the time that we did have available to ourselves, we used to record videos for her top 25 games of all time. So if you haven't checked those out, please do. So this week we played Bonanza The Duel, which is basically a 2-player version of the more popular Bonanza by Uwe Rosenberg, which is a game which the main game, Bonanza, the original game, consists of collecting sets of beans of the same type and planting them in your imaginary bean garden or bean field, and trying to collect as large sets as possible, because the larger the sets are, the more gold you can turn them in for. It also includes a trading mechanism where you trade with the other players. The 2-player version, obviously because it's a 2-player game, omits the trading, but instead it creates this gifting phase where each player takes turns offering a gift, one of the beans in their hands, or potentially one of the beans they just drew from, and they offer it to their opponents, and their opponents make a decision as to whether or not they want to accept that bean or offer a counter gift in return. And also you could bluff and offer a bean that you don't really have, because you're hoping that your opponent isn't interested in that bean, and that instead they'll offer you another bean which you really, really want. But it's a risk, because if they call your bluff and you show that you don't have that bean, then you have to give them a gold coin. And in this game, scoring is tight. The score usually ends up around the range of 17 points. So giving them 1 coin makes a 2-point difference. It's 1 less coin from you and 1 more coin from them. That's a net of 2 coins, which in a 17-point game or so is a big chunk. But my wife loves this game, and I appreciate it too. Anything Uwe Rosenberg is fun for me. We also played Tikal, and Tikal is designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Michael Kiesling, very famous, popular designers who are also popular and known for working together in designs. And this game is a Mayan themed exploration. You're exploring the Mayan jungles of Tikal and uncovering, past the layer of trees, uncovering different temples and discovering different treasures. You're trying to collect large sets of these treasures, because if you collect 3 of a kind, for example, it'll give you much more points than if you only collect 2 of a kind, or if you only have 1 of each type of treasure. Also, you're excavating each of the different temples to discover deeper and deeper levels of temple, and the more you excavate a temple, the more valuable the temple is. And in each of the different scoring rounds, which is represented by the drawing of a volcano tile, you will score for having the majority in these different temples. So if you have more explorers on this temple than any of your opponents, you're going to score the value of whatever that temple is. The more a temple is excavated, the more valuable it is and the more points it will score. Very neat, interesting theme. It gives a little bit of an exploration field. As many tile placement games, there's that sense of the ever-growing, ever-developing board, because as turn goes and turns go, you'll see more and more tiles placed on the board, and the board starts out looking like a jungle full of trees, but all of a sudden you have all this, you know, explored land. It looks really, really neat. It looks nice. The mechanisms are nice and neat. It has this action point gaming mechanism, which was innovated by these duo designers, Kiesling and Kramer, where you have 10 action points, and you use those on each of your turns to take as many actions as you want, respecting the parameters of those 10 points, because there's like 6 or 7 different things you could do, and each different thing you could do does not cost the same amount of action points. Some action only costs 1 action point for every time you do it, so you could theoretically do it 10 times in a game. Others cost 2 or 3 action points, and some even cost up to 5 action points. So even if you wanted to, you could only do those actions twice in a turn. And just economizing or managing those different possible actions and trying to get the most out of every possible turn, right? To try to be efficient, because you want to use those 10 actions because they're available to you, those 10 points. But at the same time, knowing how to mix and match them most effectively on that given turn for what you have present to you on the table is really, really neat. So that's a game that I truly have enjoyed playing. It's been a while since I've played it. It's the first time I played it with my wife Lily, but we had a really good time, and that was Tikal. We also, that's it for the games I played with my wife Lily. I also had my friend Andrew over this week. We had some really good gaming. We played the game of Roombound, fantasy-themed game where each player controls a hero who is exploring the land of Terranoff, the fantastical land of Terranoff, and getting into encounters with mythical beings and getting into combats and fights with, you know, fantastical monsters, and all of this with the hopes of leveling up their character, learning new skills, acquiring new weapons, purchasing new equipment, doing all these things so that they could get powerful enough to face the evil overlord at the end of 2 acts, which consist of going down the round track. There's I think 12 rounds per each act, so basically 24 turns. So in 24 turns, you're trying to get strong enough so that you can fight this overlord. And it was really, really cool. One thing that was exciting for me is the first time I ever won at this game. So I played this game a decent amount of times. I think this was like maybe my 7th or 8th time playing, and I've never ever won at this game. I've played with my friend Junior a good amount of times. He's won a few times. This is one of those games where you could both players could possibly lose, because you could both attempt to fight the overlord at the end of the game and neither one of you could succeed. And I've also played this game solo a few times, and have also been met with failure. But for the first time ever, I won this game. Sorry to my friend Andrew. He put up a good fight. He did really good. If he would have gotten a chance to fight the overlord before me, he might have had a shot, but I got to him first, and I was able to soundly defeat him. I leveled up my character efficiently enough that he was able to fight the monster. I strengthened his overall health, and I got some pretty good skills that were really helpful in that final combat with the overlord, and I was able to win the game. It's got a really nice fantasy theme. I wouldn't recommend it for more than 2 players, even though the player count is from 2 to 4, because the game probably takes about an hour and 15 minutes per player. So if 3 people play, we're talking about a 3.5, maybe even 4-hour game. And if 4 people play, I'm pretty sure it's going to get to 5 hours. And that's a long time, and especially the downtime in between the turns, because it's not a very interactive game. With the exception of a few things here and there, you're pretty much just passively watching your opponent take their turn. And sometimes the turns are not that short, right? Because if you're not doing nothing but the turns are quick, you might not mind a turn of another player that's irrelevant to you or where you have no interaction at all with the game. But again, the turns can sometimes be pretty long. So, but it is fun at 2 players, and it's fun at solo as well. I have played it solo. But it does have a nice fantastical theme. The characters feel rich and have some backstory to them. There is some like storyline as you're reading things and and reading the different encounters that players go through as they go on their different quests. That's probably the most interesting thing about the game. The artwork is beautiful. The combat system is pretty unique. Lots of good things that this game has going for itself. We also play Kingdom Builder by Donald X. Vaccarino. I've mentioned this before in previous videos on the channel. I appreciate this game. I appreciate Donald X. Vaccarino's gaming philosophy, where he really focuses on variable startup scenarios for the game so that game to game feels different. In particular, Kingdom Builder's strength is that each game is going to score differently because you have a group of kingdom cards which basically determine the scoring conditions for the game, and you shuffle up and draw 3 of them, so there's always going to be a combination of 3 different ones. So scoring is not always going to be exactly the same, and the way these 3 different scoring conditions, complement each other or interact with each other is always going to be different. So that's going to make you, by nature, approach the game differently each time and attempt different strategies instead of being pigeonholed or tempted to just sit on something that's worked for you once and just rinse, wash, and repeat. You got to think on your toes, and you got to adapt to every possible combination of scoring conditions. So I really like the game. At the same time, very simple, easy gaming mechanisms, which could be taught to any kind of player. It is pretty abstracted type of game, but I appreciate it. And we played, and we had a really good time. We also played Cicadas, or Cicadas, Greek-themed game where each player controls one of the different city-states of ancient Greece, and they're vying for control of the islands, and they're using their wealth to win over the favor of the gods by making them offerings. And every time you win the favor of a god, you have Zeus, you have some of the main pantheon, Greek pantheon gods: Zeus, Poseidon, Ares, Athena, and Apollo. And when you win their favor, each of the different gods give you a different special ability. Each of the different gods give you a different building that you could build, which is very important because you're trying to build one of each of the type of 4 buildings to build a metropolis. And the first player to build 2 metropolises in a multiplayer game wins. 3 metropolises in a 2-player game would win. And in the meantime, you're recruiting troops, and you're recruiting naval fleets, and you're engaging in battle, and you're trying to build your buildings. Really, really neat game. I love the auction bidding mechanism for not only the favor of the different gods, but also the turn order, right? Because where the god lines up, each round you're shuffling them, and they line up differently, and where they line up, determines where you get them in turn order. And in a 2-player game, it's interesting because basically you get 2 turns per round, as opposed to a 3 or more player game where you only get 1 turn per round. So you're trying to bid for the favor of two gods. So it's very, very interesting as the 2 opponents try to measure each other up and see who's really trying to win the favor of which god, or really just throwing out a bluff of a bid. And not bluff in the sense that they don't have the money, but bluff in the sense that they're not interested in that god. They just want you to outbid them for that god so that you don't get it for too cheap, right? So it's a lot of very interesting things. I will say this, and again, I don't often give the details of winner versus loser, but I have to say I had a pretty crushing victory of my friend Andrew here, and I've been pretty successful against him at this game. We also played at that night, we played Deadwood. At that time, Andrew's brother and another good friend of mine, Wayne, had come over, and my wife Lily had actually joined us for this game, and we played Deadwood, which I've mentioned in a previous video. It's a Wild West themed worker placement game where we're building the city of Deadwood. Basically, we're building the railroads and eventually the train station. In the meantime, players are all trying to compete for influence in the different buildings in town, which are going to give them money and also going to give them access to special abilities. But if you ever go to a building where another player has one of their cowboys at, well, you're going to engage in a duel. And the duel consists of a special combat round of dice rolling, right? You take a turn, each player takes a turn rolling the dice, and so on and so forth. If you have a more powerful cowboy than your opponent, then you get to roll a die or 2 additionally on top of what you guys roll later on. You get to roll 1 or 2 dice before the actual duel proper, so to speak. So You roll a dice and you see if you get a hit or if you get a wound, because 2 wounds will ultimately lead to a hit, and then your cowboy is dead. But you always have the option, if you have pony tokens, there's a way of getting pony tokens, of retreating from these battles if for whatever reason you feel intimidated or you think you don't have a really good chance of winning the battle. It might be worth to leave. So we did play Deadwood, and that was a really good experience. I also played a few games solo this week. I played Sagrada 2 times solo. I appreciate this game and its puzzly feel. I think if anything, this game is probably best at solo or at 2 players. I don't know, there's probably players out there who totally disagree with me, but just its nature, its abstracted nature, and its solitary feel really makes it, for me, shine at 1 or 2 players. And also I played herbaceous solo a few times. I've actually been playing this game recently a few times. I still have yet to play this with 2 players, but it's a really quick game, a really easy point of entry, but at the same time very unique to some of the other small filler card games that I have, so I have been enjoying that as well. And then finally, the last couple games I played this week were with my nephews, and we played some good ones. We played Flick 'em Up, which is, as the name or the title indicates, a flicking game. It's a Wild West themed game where players break up into 2 different teams. One team controls 5 lawmen or good guys, and the other team controls 5 outlaws or mercenaries, bad guys. And we're taking turns moving the different cowboys through this scenario of town, right? You have different buildings, actual 3-dimensional buildings that you're erecting. They're made out of cardboard, but they look nice. And you're moving through town to engage in whatever the scenario is and whatever the winning condition is. For the scenario we played, it was really just a shootout. Whoever kills the 3 cowboys of the opposing team first wins. So you're flicking these discs in place of your actual wooden cowboys to move them through town, and then you are flicking these smaller bullet discs to try to shoot at your opponent's cowboys, right? So really fun game. You know, we broke up into a team of my niece and I versus my 2 older nephews, who are 20 and 18 years old respectively, and they got off to a slow start and we got off to a pretty good start, but they started to build momentum later on, even though there was a lots of pathetic and silly attempts of flicking their disc, and the same for me too, and my niece. We had some pretty embarrassing turns as well, but that was cool. I also played Keltis with my niece Caitlin, and that's a fun game, very much in the style of Lost Cities, the card game, for those who are familiar with it. We also played Shadows over Camelot, which is definitely my favorite cooperative game of all time. This is a King Arthur themed cooperative game where players are going on different quests, trying to fill the round table with white swords by successfully completing these quests, which basically just consists of playing sets of cards which represent different types of poker hands: 2 pairs, a full house, a straight, a bunch of the same type. Really cool game. There's always the possibility of a traitor, and this time there was a traitor, and it was my nephew Alex, and he had us all fooled. And because of that, by the time we figured out he was the traitor, it was too late, and it was more than enough for him to get the victory in that game. We also played Marvel Legendary. And Marvel Legendary, one of my favorite games of all time. I know my nephews love the game a lot. We're big comic book fans, big Marvel superhero fans. We played Marvel Legendary with Kingpin as the mastermind, and Crime Wave, I believe it's called, is the name of the scheme. We actually had played this about a month ago, and we failed miserably in our attempts of winning this game. So Marvel Legendary is a semi-co-op game where you could decide to play cooperatively or you could decide to play it competitively. And there was a time where we mostly played it competitively, but in recent years we played it mostly cooperatively. And last time the game kicked our butts. Kingpin and the Crime Wave was too much for us. But this time we turned it around. We found something that worked for us. We worked well as a team, and we were able to stop the Kingpin. And it was a really fun game. Marvel Legendary, for those who don't know, is a deck building game with a Marvel superhero theme, and it has tons of expansions and tons of content, tons of variability. No 2 games ever have to be the same, I'll tell you that. So if you like deck building and you like Marvel superheroes, this definitely might be a game you might want to experiment with. And finally, the last game that we played was good old Dominion. Tried and true Dominion. This is a family favorite. My nephews love it. I love it. We have a really, really good time. And it's funny because we played this game. My nephew Alex had to go to work. And because he had to go to work, we were like, you know what? Let's sneak in this game of Dominion, but let's try to play it quick. That way Alex wouldn't feel the pressure of not having to rush to go to work or be late to go to work. And we were able to go really, really quick, lightning speed, lightning turns, and finish the game in 20 minutes without doing anything to abbreviate the game or modify its length, right? We still had the full standard amount of victory point cards, and in 20 minutes we were able to finish the game. That is an amazing experience. Dominion could be so quick and at the same time feel like such a rich and full experience. And that's it for this week. Those are the games that we played, or the games that I played, and it was an amazing week. Thank you so much for watching us here at When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry. Please make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in some more board game related content.